Dear listeners, this is Shani. In honor of Bookstore Romance Day, we are headed to Redondo Beach on August 17th for an author signing.
We're super excited to be heading to Creating Conversations, a Mysterious Galaxy partner, and we're going to be hearing from 4 authors, including Scarlett Peckham, who wrote The Duke I Tempted and The Earl I Ruined.
Yes.
So stay in tune because we're going to be reviewing The Earl I Ruined next time, and hopefully including some snippets from their conversation at the panel.
I'm excited, Bridget.
I'm not going to lie. This is our first event together, and I'm pretty stoked about it.
I got us t-shirts.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Is mine big enough to go over my stomach?
Yes, it is.
I am currently very pregnant. It's going to be great if you guys are around on the 17th and want to go listen to some people talk about romance novels. We will be there. Feel free to hit us up and let us know.
Yeah, we're super friendly.
Super friendly. And if you're not going to be there, well, that's okay, because we'll tell you all about it in the next podcast.
Absolutely. We got you.
All right. Romance at a glance.
Uh-huh.
Romance at a glance.
What you say now?
Romance at a glance.
Romance girl.
Romance at a glance. Romance at a glance.
We about to get nasty.
Welcome to another episode of Romance at a Glance, where we dissect some of yesterday's, tomorrow's, we don't know, all of the different romance novels coming out. This one is The Duke I Tempted by Scarlett Peckham, and this is her debut novel.
Ooh, this is a really great debut novel.
This is an excellent debut novel.
Yeah.
We have been waiting a couple weeks to talk about this because of various vacation schedules, and I have to say it has been a rough few weeks because, you know, you always want to like hold everything in to talk on the actual podcast. But I constantly wanted to be like texting you while I was reading it. I think I actually texted you when I was like 4 chapters in, and I was like, this is going to be your favorite one we've reviewed so far.
You did. When you said that, I was like, and I hadn't started reading it yet. I was like, must read now. I was like, Bridget knows me. And I couldn't quite figure out what was going to be in the book that you were like, you got to read this.
And then you read it and you were like, oh.
And I was like, crap, I can't talk to Bridget about this yet. And then we had to push off the podcast another week, and then another week. I was like, gosh, this is probably the book I wanted to talk about the most.
I totally agree. Yeah. I actually think this is the best book that we've read so far.
Yeah.
Just like start to finish. Not only did I enjoy the romance thoroughly, and I thought it had really good romance, like the actual like anticipation and like the character development and them getting together and misunderstanding each other, but they're like, even though they're misunderstanding, they're always like doing things to make the other person happy, even though all they have to do is like be honest. Shocker. But
communication.
Yeah, right. But it was actually just incredibly well written as well, and I enjoyed the story surrounding the romance. And like hearing about how she was like building her little nursery empire and things like that. Like I just enjoyed her writing style.
I did.
Yeah.
I find that there's nothing unique in romance, right? Mm-hmm. If you've read how many books we've read now, thousands and thousands, there's no new stories, there's no new whatever. And for me, this was like a very pleasant surprise because it felt very unique, even though it's in this genre where it's very hard to be unique.
Yeah.
Like I've read the same story over and over many, many, many times from many, many different authors. But
yeah.
This was like, and for there to be some real kink in the story, in a historical story.
I know, which almost never happens.
Never.
Usually, like, the historical ones are, like, Soup's vanilla or Soup's, like, misogynistic.
Yeah.
But this one, she was, like, super independent. I mean, she almost turned him down until, like, the very last second for his marriage proposal.
And also, she was, like, in desperate straits. She was like, oh, snap, I won't be able to be safe if I don't find some sort of protective situation. Yeah. Okay, I'll marry you.
Okay, fine. Literally, to keep myself from being taken advantage of, I'll marry you. Even though I think that you're wonderful.
In that moment, I was like, oh, like, what a sucky reality sometimes to be a girl where you're like, want to do this thing, really can't because it's not safe, or really can't. And I mean, it's much better than it was then, but still every day there's something where you're like, can't really do that thing or can't do that by myself. I need to bring a buddy or
totally
or whatever. So it was really interesting. I was just like,
And I like this whole book is about that. Basically, that like she says like multiple times in it, if I had just been born a man,
Yeah, the unfortunate.
like none of this would be happening because I would be totally fine.
She's always like the unfortunate of birth, or I think how does she say? I can't remember how she says it, but by happenstance.
By happenstance, like all these other schmoes who don't know anything that I know are gonna like live happy lives and do well in business, and I'm like struggling because I happen to be a woman,
right?
But it does make me happy though. You know, they do eventually get married. I'm going to recap the synopsis, guys. Like, stick around. I'm going to get to it. But they do end up getting married. And I did think it was definitely, I already knew this, but it's always jarring to see it when it's like you lose like your name and your ability to do anything and all of your rights, and you become your husband's property, literally, and all this other stuff. And I was like, we really have come a long way.
Yeah.
We've really, we have a ways to go.
A ways.
But we have come quite a ways. I mean, I'm married, not my husband's property. I could,
unless I want to be.
I could sign different documents by myself. I can get a loan if I want.
You can get a
one.
bank
I could buy
account.
a house. I could get a bank account. I could start a business. I have started businesses. I can buy clothes with my own money. I can
inherit.
I can inherit things. So we really have come quite a ways. Still a ways to go, but I did like that they didn't shy away, because sometimes I feel like they're like, in books it'll be like, she's so independent and blah blah blah, and then it never comes up that she's giving up all of her independence.
Yeah.
So I thought that was nice.
And she's been so adamant. She was so adamant about it in the book.
Right. Like
at every turn.
Yeah.
And I really love the way the book starts with her moving all her plants off of the property, so that the new owner can't take possession of her nursery because it's the only thing producing money.
Yeah.
And she's like, bitch, I'm taking my money
out of here. I've been paying rent. I'm taking my shit. I don't care if I have to walk it up this goddamn hill myself.
And the funniest thing is she said like, oh no, legally I protected my nursery. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't matter.
He can still take it. He could tie me up in court, bankrupt me.
Exactly. Anyway. So she still had all of her, papers in order, but it didn't matter.
Right. It would still not matter if she didn't get it out in time.
Exactly.
So let's take a step back.
Okay, step back.
Viewers. And by viewers, I mean listeners, because let's be realistic. You can't see me. This is the synopsis of The Duke I Tempted. Having overcome financial ruin and redeemed his family name to become the most legendary investor in London, the Duke of Westmead needs to secure his holdings by producing an heir, which means he must first find a wife who won't discover his secret craving to spend his nights on his knees or make demands on his long, scarred-over heart. Poppy Cavendish is not that type of woman. An ambitious, self-taught botanist designing the garden ballroom in which Westmead plans to woo a bride, Poppy has struggled against convention all her life to secure hard-won independence. She wants the capital to expand her exotic nursery business, not a husband. But there's something so compelling about Westmead, with his starchy bearing and impossibly kind eyes, that when an accidental scandal makes marriage to the Duke the only means to save her nursery, Poppy worries that she wants more than the title he's offering. The arrangement is meant to be just business, a greenhouse for an heir, but Poppy yearns to unravel her husband's secrets and to tempt the Duke to risk his heart.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
Risk your heart, baby.
Yes.
Risk your heart, baby.
I have to say that I really like Poppy.
I did too.
I was a 5-star fan.
I was a 5-star.
I was a 5-star fan.
If I could have given her a 6.
If I could have given her a 6, I would have been like 10. She was just like, first of all, I just really enjoyed her. Just like everything about her. I enjoyed the way she talked to people. I enjoyed the way that she like got her little bristles up when he questioned her business, and she was like, "Motherfucker, what?"
She's like, "Are you engaged to this guy? Are you?" She's like, "That ain't none of your business."
Yeah. And also, but that's not your business.
And she's also like,
I quit.
Yes, I'm gonna tell your sister that I'm quitting because of you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's so good, and like the whole, I feel like, the sort of like angst that comes about is that they end up getting married pretty quickly in the book. I would say at the end of the first, like third, probably.
Yeah.
And basically the problem is that she's actually in love with him and wants him to open up to her all the way. And he's trying to protect himself and the secret of liking, a little BDSM in his love life. And in doing so, he ends up hurting her and ends up getting further and further away from her. But I also like that, in the scene where, he's like, I'm not going to talk to you about this. Like, I told you what the arrangement is. She doesn't wallow or cry. She's like, fine, fuck you then. And she goes and starts writing all her letters to make her business. If that's all I'm getting out of this, I'm going to be the queen of this.
She really did though. She was like, all right, I'll go take care of my business.
Yeah. And then he's like, wait a minute, what did I do? I fucked all this up. I got to fix it.
And it was kind of going all right. Like when they first got married, it's like, if he had just said something then, they were already on the way to love. They were already connecting. They were already whatever. And it was all this secret that he didn't want to share that caused this disconnect.
Right.
Which I can understand because you her character's I know something's up.
Right.
But you're not telling me what's up, so you feel uneven. And I'm like all books are like this. It's somebody chooses just not to communicate.
Yeah.
Everything stems from that.
Totally.
So I did like that she did that. I also liked that she was always kind of proactive about she was snooping. She was always, that's some shit I do.
Yeah.
Oh, you're not gonna say anything? All right. Well, I'm just gonna go through your bag. Let me check out.
Totally. I'm gonna look at these raunchy book things, and I'm gonna think about it a little bit. Think about what we could do.
Hey, can we do page 11?
Yeah.
Page 11 looks pretty good.
Totally. Yeah, and ironically, he ends up telling what I would argue is the deeper sort of hurt in his life of his first wife and child dying in the fire. He tells her about that relatively early.
Yeah.
And I would argue that for me at least, that feels like that would be a more vulnerable thing to share than, oh, hey, I like to get smacked on the ass with a whip.
I don't know.
But I guess in Victorian England, it's maybe not.
In those days, and especially
it was you could go to jail and lose all of your property.
He's also the submissive, and I think it's more taboo for the male to be the submissive.
That's true.
When she walks in on the scene of him getting his ass beat,
yeah,
it didn't come off good for him. Even the way she described it when she walks in and he's
leaned over
or whatever. It was a very vulnerable positioning.
It's very vulnerable.
And if you just imagine your significant other just walking in and seeing him bent over vulnerable and somebody beating him and you're just the fuck?
Except for that, I thought, the saddest thing was when he realized, she wasn't disgusted. She wasn't upset. She was just hurt that he would, go to someone else and not her. Which I thought was, obviously he then went about and fixed it. But
you remember they had that, the awkward sex scene before, where they're angry at each other.
Oh yeah. She mounds him on the table.
Yeah, and she's telling him what to do, and he's all for it.
Yeah,
that was their best sex scene, but they didn't know why it worked.
Well, I know because afterwards she was ashamed of her own behavior.
Yeah,
because she felt bad that she was treating him with such distaste and stuff, and then she jerked it twice more, and I was like, "Good for you, girl. Good for you." But then they don't talk about it, and I think it's brings me back to education, Shani. That's where it brings me back.
Mm-hmm.
Because really, if you just told people about these things and just a matter of fact, it's not wrong to feel any of these things, then I feel 85% of the world's sexual problems would immediately disappear. And 100% of teen pregnancies probably would immediately disappear.
Right?
And people would it would be much harder for someone to get sort of blindsided into a problematic relationship and being taken advantage of.
Yeah.
Because if you had all the facts up front and you kind of knew what was going on up front, even if you'd never experienced it or you never wanted to, at least if you knew when an urge came on or when a feeling came on or when someone, gripped your wrist hard and you felt your pulse race and you're like, oh, I'm disgusting. And it's no, that's just
that's how bodies work.
That's how bodies work. That's normal. It might be normal for you. It might not be normal for everyone, but it might be normal for you, and that's okay.
I had this conversation recently because somebody asked me, do you think that all these kinks people have been since the beginning of time? Or do you think it's because we've evolved to a level where we need to whatever? And I actually think kinks more so exist, especially some that are more extreme, because we've had to suppress. I think if people could actually have expressed some of their kinks from openly from a younger age, they actually wouldn't get warped as they do. Because I even think of just some things for me where I'm like, oh, well, I came up with that because it was a workaround.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Or like it was like, oh, well, I can't do this because, God. So I can only do this. Or it's like when girls are like, oh, I'll only do anal.
Right.
Because
I need to be a virgin.
I need to be a virgin. And then they really love anal. And then they become anal queen 99 on Pornhub. Do you know what I mean?
Hilarious.
Like, I think if people didn't have to hide, then, one, it'd be great. But two, I think these kinks would evolve differently.
I definitely think they would evolve differently. I definitely think throughout time, people have had kinks.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Like, because, human beings are an incredibly sexual, all animals are incredibly sexual species, but human beings are, especially because we can think, and so we can imagine, and we can...
the imagination.
The imagination is everything, and we can have anticipation towards it, and I definitely think kinks have been around. I 100% agree with you that most things that turn into some sort of, like, perversion of what would have been a healthy expression of their sexuality and becomes like shameful or becomes whatever, could be avoided with just a little bit of openness.
A little bit of openness.
I think about that, because I have a kid and I think about that all the time. And I'm like, I 100% already know I'm going to talk to her about like what porn is and what romance novels are and how to pleasure yourself and make sure you understand your own body and what things you might be into and what things you might not be into. Because I was having a conversation the other day, and not that I don't know the context around who they were talking about, but they were talking about a friend and how he was in a sort of like a dom and submissive relationship, and they clearly were like uncomfortable with it in general. And I was, I don't know the situation, so perhaps he is taking advantage of his submissives, or because they called them a sex slave. And I was like, if you're not in that, you don't know. I was like, it could be a very consensual situation. It could also be very unconsensual, and it could be something where he coerced them or where he's sort of brainwashed them or any number of things. But it makes me a little bit uncomfortable when people like immediately judge someone without kind of knowing all the particulars. Yeah. Because I'm like, it could just be that you aren't into spanking someone. That doesn't mean she's not into getting spanked or tied up or I don't know. They didn't like tell me how far it had all gone, but and again, I don't know that person, but it does make me feel like people get so much like puritanical shame put on their desires, and that's just never helpful. And I thankfully have always had a very healthy ego and sex drive, and so when people are like, that's weird, I'm like, go fuck yourself, it's not that weird. And like, if I like it and they like it, then we're gonna do that. Like, I don't need you to be involved in my choices in the bedroom.
It's interesting because having like just entered like the kink community, right? So I remember when I like the first like class I went to or whatever, I had my eyes like super open. Everything was so different and new. And somebody a long time ago told me, when you see something you don't understand, like in your mind, open a new mental door and like put it in there. Like put it in there and then go explore it later. Don't like immediately judge it or whatever. Right. So whenever I see something that's interesting, so like the first time I saw somebody with their pet, right? So it was a guy and he had a girl and she was like on her knees. She had a leash and a thing or whatever. And then she had like a pad, like a doggy pad that she sat on, like a pillow or whatever. In my mind, I was like, new mental door.
Yeah. Or whatever. I also like the thing that Amy Poehler says in her book, which is not for me, but okay for you. Because that's what I think. I see that and I'm like, not for me. Good for you though. If it's for you and it makes you happy, then good for you. Yeah. Not for me. I have no desire to be kneeling on a little pad because my knees will hurt and I know I'll be uncomfortable, and even just the positioning, I'm like,
first of all, the positioning,
I can't.
I was like, my body can't.
I can't.
Or even like slave pose or like the home like sub pose,
obeisance or whatever they call it.
I forget what it's called, but yeah, it's like high protocol. It's like with your legs under your thighs or whatever. like head down, hands. I can't sit like that for any length of time.
No. I would immediately be breaking all of the, like, you're supposed to wait for them to tell you what to do. And I'd be like, you've already called me like Squirming Bridget while you're editing, because I'm always moving.
Fidget Bridget.
Fidget Bridget. I'm always moving. There is no way I could stay still for longer than like maybe 2 minutes. And then I'd be like trying to stretch an arm out. I'd be like wiggling my toes. I'd be like, man, I'd have to like stand and just do like a full, sun salutation. It would be like creaking and cracking. Yeah, it wouldn't work.
All the things, But it's interesting because like, and then I've seen needle play where people are doing the needle designs through the skin in the back. Or there was a couple that got married and they were on hooks. They were literally had hooks through the back of their skin or whatever, and they were in love, and and so that worked for them. Yeah. So I think that it's funny to me because anything that two people consent to, it doesn't kill them. I think, like, at the end of the day, is great, and for that woman I saw who was playing like a pet, for her, this relieves her like high anxiety for her. Sure, you know what I mean. When she goes into like her pet play, she goes from not being able to function because of anxiety to being controlled and feeling safe for her and whatever. Sure. So who am I to be like, that's not okay? That's weird. Yeah. That's weird. Like, it's
weird for me, but
you know what I mean?
She's happy and he's happy.
Like, I can, and you can think it's weird. You just keep that shit to yourself. Yeah,
I agree. Just talking about the positioning, because it always makes me think of this. Whenever I see anything, whether it's a photo or a GIF or porn or just anything where someone is tied up in what I would describe as an unnatural physical position. I don't think it's unnatural to want to be tied up. Yeah. I like to enjoy to have my hands tied, but in a position that's not hurting my shoulders or my elbows or my wrists. Some of the positions these people are contorted into, I'm like, I'd never be able to walk again. Yeah. That's like, all I can think. Is like
the shibari with the ropes when they tie the legs around the legs so your calf is to your thigh.
Yeah, no.
How?
No, I'd never walk again. I would literally have a Charlie horse in like 14 seconds. It would be terrible. But yeah, I think in general, like, I think across the board, no matter what you're talking about, sex or not, if people just did that, open up another door, or just said, you know what, not for me, but if it's for you, that's okay. And again, to your point, as long as everyone's healthy and consensual and it's not killing anyone or hurting anyone. Yeah. I feel the same way about like children, rearing. Yes. It might not be for you, but it might be working out great for their family. So just say, not for me.
I always say, like, if you like it, I love it. Yeah. If you like it, I love it. If you're happy, then I love that you're happy. Yeah. The end.
And in this one, I do have to say they were both liking it. I was liking it.
I
liked that they had. So first of all, I always enjoy, as we've talked about in previous episodes, that the sex doesn't all happen in the last like chapter. I like, even if it's just like they didn't have full sex right away. Yeah. But they had like a steamy makeout. And then they had they had the build up. Yeah. And then they had like the couch scene where her ankle was hurting and he was like going down on her. And then they had like, just like by the time they got to like them actually having sex, I was like down to clown. Yes. I was like, let's do this.
And it made sense.
It made total sense. And it was their wedding day. Yeah. But I also liked that because the book is a little kinky, they didn't like have sex in their bed and like a suite and room. They had sex like out in the rain under a pavilion where he like stripped her naked.
Because sometimes when it's got to go down, it's got to go down.
Location like, independent. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, especially like if you had been anticipating this for months and months and months and months. Everybody's wet.
Everybody's
in the rain. Your clothes are clinging. Perhaps.
You can see all the things. You know what I'm saying? Outlines. Yes. Outlines are sexy. Like, I'm a big fan of, like, I know everybody's like, get naked and that's sexy, but I actually like clothing because clothing for me.
The imagination.
The mystique, and the curves. Yeah. When you take your clothing off, the curves go away. Like, the way they fall goes away. Mm-hmm. And I love the way clothes fall on curves and things like that, like if a guy just has on, he has no shirt on, but he has his pants and a belt, that shit just gets me. Do you know? Like, it just does.
A belt.
The belt is crucial. The belt's crucial because when he takes it off and you hear the jingle of the buckle,
you know it's going down.
This is all like Pavlov.
Apparently, because we live in Southern California, I don't get this Pavlovian response because my husband doesn't wear belts. He doesn't wear pants because it's hot all the time. So I don't get the I don't get the belt. On a belt. I don't get the belt jingle. I understand the belt jingle. Though.
You understand though.
I understand.
It's like as soon as you hear that, you're just like, oh shit! It revs up. You know, it's very interesting.
Yeah, I think there's a reason why like lingerie and sexy clothing and a variety of different types is like billion-dollar industries because it can be quite provocative.
Yes. And I know I only would wear stuff once too sometimes. I'd buy like an expensive corset thing for one time.
Why wouldn't you wear it again?
Because I'd stick it in the back of the closet somewhere.
Because you're not like wear it every day.
No, of course not. Comfy. And then I forget that I have it, and then I'm like, oh, I need another corset. Like
I can't wear corsets. My boobs are too big.
No, yeah, you got those big. Yours turn into those plates when you put them in a corset.
I know. Anyone else who's on the podcast who has large bosoms, if you know somewhere you can buy corsets for very large bosomed women, let me know because I always see those cute little things, and I'm like, but where do the boobs go? Because my boobs are robust, one might describe them as, and they don't fit.
I remember my cousin's wedding. Her corset, she has like triple D, I don't know what, huge jungles, and they just sat up next to her neck, in her wedding dress. I was like, that can't feel like,
no, it doesn't
and they're not round anymore. They I'm just
like a shelf.
Yeah, it's like a shelf.
Yeah.
Or whatever. I have like the perfect size little thing. I remember being a kid and stuffing my bra, and now I'm an adult. I'm like, thank God for small titties. Like,
dude,
I can sleep on my stomach.
I know. I told my husband before we got married that he better enjoy him while he's got him, because after I finish breastfeeding our children, shit is over. I'm getting them out. They're going down as far as the doctor will take them. Great. He enjoys her breasts. He gives her breasts a little love.
He does, which I appreciate.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So what was your hero rating? What did we both had a 5 for our heroine. We're loving the Poppy.
I'm loving the Poppy. For him, I gave him a 4. And because he drove me crazy with the one, not talking. Right. But for the story I accepted it. But 2, there's one point where he just flipped. Where he just got up until a certain point he was really trying to court her, really trying to be considerate or whatever. And then after they were married, he had this fuck you moment. And I was like, yo man, that's extreme.
When she touched the key? Was that when she saw his scars the first time?
I think it was when she
or she asked him about the key again.
She was asking him and he was like, I'm not going to tell you or whatever. And then he was like,
this is not our arrangement.
This is not our arrangement. And then it escalated so quickly to me and whatever. And I'm like, I felt her pain in that moment as somebody who's super independent as a person. I'm not getting married because I'm trying to maintain my independence, And so she finally was like, I'll marry you. And now she's in it. She can't get out of it. And then he flips. And for me, I'm like, that's unfair. So I gave him a 4. I did actually like him. I like the angst of it. I like whatever. But in that moment, he lost a point.
Okay. I gave him a 4.5. I really enjoyed him. I especially enjoyed that I feel like a lot of times when the guy is kind of a dick at some point, it gets really glossed over.
Yeah.
And I like that his apology was of an appropriate scale, I felt.
Yeah.
He was willing to let her go completely and drew up the divorce papers and gave her her freedom and her independence as a I know that I ruined all of this with my secrecy.
Yeah.
And that you just wanted me to let you in. And so because I defrauded you, here is your freedom and all this money and all of this property so that you don't ever have to be beholden to anyone anymore. And I felt like that was an appropriate scale.
It was.
For the fact that he was being a butthead.
Yeah.
So
he also low-key was like, but really don't leave me.
but please don't leave me because I love you. Yeah. But if you do leave me, I understand. And I also liked that wasn't because he found out she was pregnant. Because at the beginning of the chapter, she's like, oh my God, I can't believe the doctors only waited 6 hours to tell him I was pregnant. After I said, don't tell anyone. And so she thinks he's coming over because he found out she's pregnant. But really, he doesn't even know she's pregnant yet. And he's just finally doing sort of the right thing.
The right thing, yeah.
And telling her everything. And then I thought the last couple chapters, maybe 2 chapters, where they actually explore his sexuality for the first time was like very endearing, because she's like a little nervous at first, and then she's like, put this blindfold on, so that way I can do what I want and don't have to look at you judging me. And like she's like super into it.
I love that she went to the mistress or the dame, dame, and was like, look, teach me. Yeah. Teach me how to Dougie. Like,
the lady's like, I'm not going to ban him. And she's like, no, I want to be your pupil. And the lady's like, okay.
Well, here's your wedding grab. Here's his key. You know, I thought that was like super cute. Yeah. The only thing I was like, they said that she was in there for like an hour, like an intensive hour. Sure. And I was like, what do you learn in an intensive hour?
Well, they did talk about she learned like the different, like how to switch the thing. So it sounded like she was learning a lot of like the literal, like how to use the implements sort of thing versus like practicing on someone.
Yeah.
Like she was like literally like, okay, how do I hit someone with a birch? I mean, I don't think I would know that off the top of my head. How do you hit someone with a whip? I don't know. I don't know that off the top of my head I could give the subtlety of like a flick versus a smack versus one that's a little sharper as like a slight punishment for whatever them.
The funniest thing is because the thing is I've been going to classes, and the classes are 2 hours long each to learn anything or whatever. But they have like this one thing that you go to an event where you can learn how to do all the things. You can learn how to paddle. You can learn how to face mac. You can learn how to flog. You can learn how to do all these things. And of course, I must touch everything.
Sure.
And so I when I went, I wanted to learn how to do the flogger, right?
Okay.
And I was like, you just hit him with it.
Just wail on him. Break a leg.
And the guy's like, nah, like calm down. Slow your roll here.
Just hit him.
Okay. Like he's like, you can't hit.
Shani's like bursting people's kidneys and stuff.
Like I'm ready to go. Yeah. Like I got this. And he's like, no. Here, let's explore the places we are allowed to hit. Right? He's like, well, one, can't hit the head.
No.
We don't hit the head.
No.
And we don't hit the tailbone.
Oh, yeah.
But anything really in between is all right. You don't want to do like these heavy direct strikes on the kidneys or things like that. You can kind of like hit them, graze them a little bit. You don't want to go ham there or whatever. So I'm like, they're trying to do it, or whatnot. I definitely hit someone in the head once or twice.
Just bad aim.
The guy put his hands down literally so that I would hit him instead of actually hitting
the person
or whatever. But he said I did really good for like my first time. Because and apparently I didn't know this at the time. He told me afterwards. It's hard to put your hand on someone, like hold them and flog them at the same time because of just the amount of space that you need. Yeah. But because I was trying to not hit them, and I was using my hand as a
like a guiding,
like a focal point.
Okay,
so I could always maintain the same way. I was just like, okay, so I put my hand down and I started doing it. He's like, it took me 2 years to learn how to do that. I was like, yes, head of the curve, A in the class. Let me tell you,
ready to flog some folks.
Now I just need a flogger.
So funny. Oh my God. I just feel like I can imagine you're just like giddy excitement. He's like, you need to calm down. You need to just bring it right the fuck down.
He's like, you're at an 11 and I'm going to need you to come down to like a 3.
Like a 3 to learn.
Yeah.
You can get to an 11 later, but let's just bring it on down.
He also changed the flogger. He's like, you're really excited. So I'm going to take that flogger from you and I'm going to give you
like the training wheels flogger.
Instead.
All right. Well, speaking of flogging, did we feel like he was a McDreamy or McSteamy?
I thought he was McSteamy.
Did you?
I did. I didn't find him like McDreamy. I feel like it was a little bit more romantic as the way I see it. I saw him as a McSteamy, and he was willing to do the things. Yeah. So that for me,
I think especially for historical romance, he was McSteamy because he was eating her out.
Yeah.
And
he's eating her McMuffin.
He was eating the McMuffin more than once.
And
I feel like in historical romance, that's not always the case.
Yeah.
It's not always the case.
They always like gloss over that, and they always gloss over the boobs. I mean, the boobs get no love, like in porn and romance novels. I'm like, the boobs are the business.
You know what? It's funny is my boobs are not that sensitive.
Dang, girl. Mine are like.
I think it's because the nerve endings are too far away on all the boobs. So I've never really cared about that because I'm like, I mean, if it's bringing you joy, it's not like I hate it. It's just like there are other more erogenous zones than that zone. I also get really mad when people compare, and this is a complete side note, but really mad when people compare boobs to penises. And I'm like, they are not equivalent sex organs.
No.
The vagina and vulva area is the penis area and the balls.
I mean, it's pretty...
The boobs are chest hair.
Yeah.
That's all the boobs are. It's chest hair. That's it. Just chest hair. That's the equivalent. They are not at all equivalent to a penis. Me showing you my boobs is not... Does
not mean show me your penis.
Show me. Well, and also, like, it's just not the same.
No.
Like, you, like, fondling my boobs does not mean I fondle your penis. I fondle your pectorals.
Yes.
This is where we're at now. We're at this level together.
Base 1.
Yeah. We're at base 1 together. Perhaps rounding it to steal the second. We don't know. But it's just it's a side pet peeve of mine.
Yeah, I would say it's accurate.
People are dumb.
And the other thing too is like when it comes to like kinks that I've realized is like people have kinks based on their own sensation or whatever, and in general we all kind of think we're the same, right? We're all humans, we're all whatever. And even in the last 2 years, I've realized like I never knew that my skin registers so much differently than other people's skin. Like I don't have any natural oils in my skin. It has no give, right? So like if you were to like turn the skin of my arm very quickly, it would hurt. Where somebody else you could stretch, it would stretch. For me, it's like right there. It's like nope, doesn't give. It feels like you're ripping my skin off, And the way pain registers is just different. Like you can scratch me really hard, and I'm like
sure.
Child's play, Yeah. But if like you tickle me or you touch me really lightly, it will irritate me till I want to like kill your whole family. It's like, dear God, if you don't get out of my face right now with that, like, and other people are like, they hate scratching or whatever. Sure. They want that like light sensation. So when it comes to kinks, to believe that anybody's is better or worse than anybody else's is like to kind of think that everybody's body is made to take in information the same way.
And their mind, too.
Yeah. And like they think that people have a foot fetish because where the feet are like located in the brain is right next to like your pleasure center. And so there's a cross.
And there's a lot of nerves in your feet, too.
Yeah. My foot is attached to my vagina. No, I mean.
Someone's like rubbing your feet or something?
Yeah. It's attached to my uterus, right? So if I have a cramp, like right now I'm on my period, my foot cramps first. Right before, it's like a trigger that I know that cramps are coming. So somehow there's a wiring there.
Oh, definitely.
So like it also works for like fun time. Yeah. It's like, ooh, there's a wiring there, and you squeeze my foot. It's like, woohoo!
I have to say that I'm really thankful that isn't a fetish that my husband has, only because I walk barefoot all the time. My feet are always dirty and like calloused, and I just would feel bad for him if that was something he really needed, because I don't know that I would commit to like getting pedicures and washing my feet to the satisfaction of someone who's going to have them on their genitalia.
The crazy thing is, if he had a foot fetish, he probably would want to wash them for you, and he'd probably want to paint them for you.
Oh, see,
that could be a benefit.
Now I need to rephrase. I wish he had a foot fetish and I could get foot scrubs and my nails painted every day. That sounds.
He's delightful. Like, I need your feet today, babe. I need your feet today. It was a stressful day.
It was a stressful day for me too. You rub those feet.
That's
hilarious. Okay, well, in that case, I changed my mind. But if that wasn't on the table with it, I would not want my feet near anyone's genitalia. That is for sure.
I agree with you, because I'm the same. Barefoot all day. I'm like, they're rough. Yeah. They're pretty from the top, but don't look for underneath. It's hobbit feet underneath.
Yeah. I have a garden. I'm in there barefoot every day. I'm outside. What else we got? Oh, well, we obviously have been talking about kink this whole time, but this book, I would say, classy to nasty. I'm giving it some good kink in there.
Yeah.
There's a little BDSM in there.
Yep.
They did have like a vanilla encounter or two, but for the most part, their encounters had some level of
kink. It was definitely kinky, and definitely a light BDSM
Yep.
or whatever. And there was definitely power exchange.
Yep.
So I think,
definitely.
Yeah. So I think it definitely fell into that.
And there was a nice, I thought the part she put in where he was explaining like afterwards, I'll need you to hold me. Like it was nice that he explained that up front.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's all about communication. And
It's
she was like obviously wanted to snuggle him and stuff. 'Cause she, it's like, I mean, I've never whipped anyone, but I can imagine that afterwards, just like it's a lot of emotion because it's like a very, very vulnerable thing on both sides.
Also when you engage in that kind of play, the chemicals, all those happy chemicals go way, way up, but then they must come way, way down.
Sure.
So it leads to like depression. Afterwards, if you don't do any sort of aftercare or loving or whatever, you'll actually spiral out and be like, did this person really care about me? Did they whatever? You'll go into irrational thought.
Yeah.
So that's like, so it's kind of like almost like the most important thing to remember to do the aftercare.
Yeah.
So that doesn't happen. And then
this was good for me. It was good for you.
Yeah.
It was like,
just that reassurance. And it's considered cruel punishment in kink for you to go like radio silent on your submissive, right? So you have like a scene and you don't call them the next day or talk to them or whatever. That's considered like cruel and unusual punishment.
I can see that because they're letting you, I mean, I'm going to say be cruel and unusual, but they're letting you like take them to a point of extreme vulnerability.
Yeah.
And then to not like say anything afterwards, that is very cruel.
Yeah.
Because you just like opened up all kinds, like not only your body, but your mind and everything. And yeah, that's a no-no.
It's a no-no.
That's a no. I mean,
I think
I
in
don't
life,
even
in
know
general.
the rules. I think in general, if you have like sex with someone, it's like a no-no to just like, if they're expecting you to call, then you should call them.
Yeah. Even if it's not going to work out, be like, it's not going to work out, but I'm going to let you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with the fact that our mutual body fluids were near each other. Just isn't going to work out. Oh my God.
The Skimmer's Guide to the Cookies and the Nookie.
This book had quite a few moments. Quite a few. I think the first one in the book version was chapter 7. I'm not sure where it was in the Audible version.
So in Audible it was in chapter 11. Okay. That they actually got down, but they...
Oh, I think I was counting...
No, I think you're right, actually. So they didn't have... They had almost... They got pretty far in chapter 11.
Yeah.
Because they didn't really do it, I think, till the first time until they got married.
Yeah.
And that was chapter 33 in Audible.
Yeah.
And the fact that I remember that off the top of my head and did not look at my paper tells me how much I was in it. I was like, yeah.
I read this book quick. I mean, I pretty typically read books fast, but I read this book, I think, in one sitting.
Yeah.
And I have like a job and I have kids and I have a husband and responsibilities. And I was like, look, you guys can like deal with yourselves tonight. I need to be just reading this book. I have priorities. Okay?
I remember listening to this book partially in the car at a certain point, and I was like, I need to be home I was like, I need to be home.
I need to be home on my couch,
comfy
yeah.
to listen to this book.
Yeah.
I was like at one point in traffic, and I was like, this is not the business. I want to be home.
I know. I was into it. Yeah. My favorite lines from the book, ironically though, did not have anything to do with sex. Sometimes they do,
Me
sometimes
too.
they don't. Because that I like the romance more than I like the nookie necessarily.
Yeah.
But these ones were all, I feel like they were all just like, I enjoyed the way she was writing about like womanhood at the time. So this was my favorite. Was the actual answer was too vulgar to disclose to a person who would never be able to understand the endless concessions one must make as a woman living in the world of men. How one must resign oneself to the ever-porous line between friend and foe, weighing expediency against principle. And I was like, yes, even today. It's like, is it worth like angering someone when you don't know what their reaction's going to be? Or is it better to just placate them and just like sweep it under the rug? I feel like that decision, even as a modern woman in 2019, I feel like I have to make it a lot.
Yeah.
Thankfully, not with the men in my life who are closest to me, so I don't have to make that decision with like my husband or my dad or my brother or whatever. But I do feel like I have to make that decision frequently with people I work with, I mean, the teller at the gas station, some random guy who comes up to you on the street. Like, there's so many instances where you're like, really want to be like, just get the fuck out of my face. And you're like, is it worth the satisfaction I'll get when I don't know what the response is? And it could be a dangerous response.
Yeah.
And in her case, you know, a response, you know, she's describing why she was still friends with Raridan, Tom Raridan, after he is being like such a complete douche all the time to her. And she's like, how do you even explain to someone who has all the power that like I can't just tell him to get out of my face because he could literally do so many bad things to me.
Yeah. I think that was like an amazing line. When I read that line, I forgot about that line until you said it. But when I read that line, I was like, I encountered this situation so many times. Like I have someone I work with constantly that I'm, in general, I'm really blunt, right? But I have someone I work with where I'm like, there's so much I can't tell you. You like, and the thing is, he asks for honesty all the time. He's like, I need to be honest, but he can't handle honesty. Like, so I'm constantly navigating how much to tell, when to tell, how to introduce it, you know, throwing it out casually, like, you know, that sort of thing. And it's exhausting. Yeah. To the point where, like, I try not to really hang out or whatever because in general, I'm a pretty open person. I tell everybody, I'm like, this is what's going on. I won't tell other people's secrets, but I tell mine all the time. Yeah. You know, and so I distinctly dislike that has to be the case, you know? And I know my partner, I probably hurt his feelings all the time because I'm so blunt, you know, or whatever. But, you know, he knows it's coming. He's like, that wasn't nicest, but at least I know the truth. Yeah. Or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is, I just liked that the truth to powerness of it. She's like, how do I even explain this to you in a way you'll get? And she basically doesn't. She's just like, you're never going to understand this.
It's like an emotional intelligence sometimes that I feel that a great number of men don't have. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like being a woman just means you come with this higher level of nuanced intelligence.
I think so. I think it's like anything. It's like, you know, like I didn't get certain lessons of, you know, emotional intelligence or personal safety that you got because you're of color. So your parents had to prepare you for the world in a different way than mine did. Yeah. We were both women, so our parents had to prepare us for that aspect. But like I didn't have an added layer. And I feel like I could never imagine like what that childhood or like all the things that your parents, when you came home and said, so-and-so said this, your parents had to explain and I had to, you know, do all these things that my parents just like never ran into. Yeah. So it's definitely, I can see why if you aren't a really conscious parent of a boy, which clearly the generations before us have not been.
But the new generation is doing pretty good.
It seems like they're trying.
You know?
I'm not raising a boy, so I don't know, but it seems like they're definitely trying. But it's like if you're not consciously raising them to think about the other person's perspective and think about your, you know, the differences in situations, then I think that how would you ever know?
It's like my brother, he does an amazing job. Of course, he's a boy in a house full of girls, right? And he gets actually his own little feminist bubble crazy. He goes to some extreme sometimes that I even don't. Like he plays video games always as a girl, right? He does this specifically so that when guys say like misogynist things, he can like go off on them.
Clap back at them. So funny.
You know, or whatever. And I'm always, he's like,
that's good. He's protecting girl gamers.
You know, and then he reports them and cuts them out, you know? Yeah. And I know he does that specifically because he's in a house, you know, from girls and he's heard of all our horror stories and experiences. And he's, you know, he's angry that that's, you know, the case or whatever. And I babysat recently for a friend who has two sons that I swear to God are the most conscious little boys I ever met in my life. Like they say stuff and I'm just like, holy cow, who's raising you? She's amazing. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, like his dad, the way they model when I watch them, I'm like, oh my gosh. And I remember being there and another little girl coming in. And she said in the room with the boys, she was like, I don't hang out with girls because girls are just too much drama, right? She's like 9. And the boys were like, well, we have girlfriends and they're awesome. Like the response back was like, I was just like, slow clap. Like slow clap for you guys.
Yes.
You know, so I have hope for this next generation. I've seen much more sensitive people being accepting of sensitivity in men, teaching emotions and letting those ride in men and stuff. So I think it's
I worry because obviously there are still a lot of people who aren't doing those things, and I get worried because I feel like girls have had like the female empowerment thing going now for like girl power and girls can do anything, and for a couple of decades now, which is, you know, obviously why as society is rolling around, women are starting to evolve and reach different heights, you know, professionally and personally and all this other stuff. And I worry that we're slowly adding in the like, and also boys, you don't have to like be a man and be tough, and you know, you can just be who you are. And who you are is just great.
It's just great.
It's just fine.
And you can cry.
And it's interesting because I've been around families where like a grandparent or an uncle will be like, you know, boys don't cry. And I really don't like, depending on how well I know that family. Sometimes I'm like, actually they can. You need to back off. And sometimes like their mom will jump in or their dad will jump in or whomever. But I'm always like, what a stupid thing to tell a child. You can't have an emotion. And then that's like, again, leading back to the whole like sex education thing and leading back to like people exploring their own feelings and emotions. It's like if you tell someone whatever you're feeling is wrong, then that's when all those things get twisted and
you start putting them in weird boxes that they don't fit in. And, you know, I know like my cousin is having an issue now. And I realize that this is probably a problem for so many people, right? Which is like you rely on the grandparents to babysit, right? And so every time she sends the kids to the grandparents, she says the kids come back and they're different people. Like the grandparents, you know, do the thing where they're like, you can't cry, you don't do this or whatever. Or boys, they came back going, boys do this and girls do this. And they're like, and she's raising boys that she's like, no, you do whatever you want. And her boys are like artistic and sensitive. They want to paint their nails. They want to do the things. They want to whatever. And she doesn't put any stigma on those, you know? And it's funny because I remember somebody going crazy about their son painting nails. That is like such a phase that happens and is quickly over. There's very few boys that keep constant like painting their nails down.
Very cute. A few kids who want to keep doing it in general. It takes so much time and effort. It's like painting the,
do you know what I mean? And also society on its own does that. Like if a boy goes to school and he doesn't see his friends doing it, a lot of times they quickly give it up. So if they're committed to the nail painting, it'll stay. But if they ain't committed, it goes away. Like, so I don't understand. To me, it's like always you're making something out of nothing. And the fact that you made something out of it, now they're like, oh, now it's something. This is a thing, you know? And so that's always very interesting. But yes, when a different generation is like raising your kids and you need them to, and you're trying to have that conversation, you know, as she is like, hey, we don't tell our kids these things. We need you to respect these boundaries. But they're like, fine, but we ain't gonna watch your children. That becomes
it's so tricky. So as you know, my mom lives with me and she is an incredibly open-minded person. However, she is just of a different generation. It's just a fact. And she'll even say some things occasionally that I'm like, okay, yeah, but in the future, I think it'd be better if we rephrased that because, you know, it's so easy for a kid to pick up what you're giving them.
Yeah.
And if you say things like, you know, oh, like, I don't even know a good example, like, oh, you're flirting with the boys. And I'm like, no, she's a baby. She's just charming. She's just looking and laughing. Yeah. And she's doing it to everyone, girls and boys. And maybe one day she's going to like girls.
Yeah.
Maybe she'll like boys. Maybe she'll like both. But if you say all the time, like, you're flirting with boys, and one day they grow up and they don't like boys, now they're like, what's wrong with me? Because all my life people have been saying that.
Yeah.
So we're trying to be very conscious about.
Or even the reverse, like where boys think, oh, if a girl smiles at me, she's flirting.
Yeah.
Where you're like, no. I'm just a charming ass person.
I'm just a happy individual. This has nothing to do with you. And it's very tough because we have quite a set of set in their ways grandparents on the other side. And at the moment, she doesn't understand English well enough for me to be really like constantly saying like, actually, I'm not comfortable with what you just said. But I know that the day is quickly approaching where I'm going to have to like step in and say, actually, like, you just can't say that to her, because they assign a lot of genderizations onto just general personality traits. Yeah. That I think is very unhelpful for a little kid, because I'm like, no. And also, I feel like they assign a lot of like arbitrary things that they then attribute to being a girl or a boy. Yeah. That I'm like, you're only, I mean, like, if you didn't know she was a girl, then you would say it's because she's a boy. Yeah. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. But it's just, I mean, and I get they're trying to like fit her into their worldview, and they love her. And that's the hardest part, is like, you want them to know their grandparents and be around them. But at the same time, I want her to be emotionally happy and healthy. I don't care if you're upset by my choices to keep her happy and healthy. But it is so tough, because it's also, one of the things I've found is that it's also hard to say, hey, the data has just changed. And like, this is just, you've had, since you last raised a kid, it's been 30 years plus. And the science and the psychology and all the studies and all the research has just changed. Like, more has been learned. Now they have data from all around the world that they can compare, which was obviously not possible back then. Like, it's just different. It's not saying what you did was wrong. It's just saying that what we're doing is different, because there is just new data, and there's just, and it's so hard for people to not get very upset by that. Yeah. And it's so hard to say like, yeah, okay, you can be upset, but you still have to do it my way. You know what I mean? It's a tricky situation all around. Yeah. Especially, they had the same thing with their parents too. And, I'm sure. But now they have. I'm sure they have such amnesia now. Oh, I'm sure. Oh my God, I can imagine. My mom has told me like the shit that my dad's family told her, or that her parents told her about whatever she was doing with us, and she was like, "I don't care. This is what we're doing. It's working for us." And it's So it's definitely. It's just, if people just get very set in their ways. They do. They do. Very set. And ego is like a real thing. It's tough. Like, especially when you're kids, there's things like that where that are a very prideful thing, I think, comes in. Like, well, you turned out okay. And I'm like, I am fine. But I also would like her to be better than fine. I'm always like, the next generation's job is to take it to the next level. Right? Input new data, get new results. Yeah. Like, so if my kid did things the same way I did, I would actually be kind of disappointed. I'd be so disappointed. I'd be like, I didn't get you to here so you could do the same thing. Yeah, I mean, like, I've taken a lot of courses and talked to a lot of people and worked a lot on my emotional, like, intelligence and my emotional ability to, like, talk to people and listen to new ideas without, like we were talking about earlier, without getting riled up or without immediately saying, oh, that's wrong. Like, I work really hard to, like, at least I might think it's wrong anyways, but I at least work really hard to ingest it first and think first before I like, and especially about something, like, you unconsciously are hurting people around you who care about you all the time, because you don't know what their sort of emotional landscape is. What might trigger someone, what might have happened in their past. They might have had a shitty day at Subway. You don't know, and something you say triggers that experience. Who knows? It could be deep and it could be surface level. But I think the important thing is like recognizing that you heard someone, talking through it, opening up the discussion, and then resolving it and figuring out how to not trigger them in that way again. Yeah. You're going to trigger them somehow. Yeah. And I feel like I would be so thrilled if my kid learned that as a kid, which she will, because I'm working on it. But like, if I'm teaching her that as a kid, I learned that, let's say high school and onward. But if she starts learning that at 1, 2, that like when someone upsets you, then you talk to them and you resolve it and you try and find, or when you have an emotions are okay. And you can voice them and you can say that you're upset, but you can't hit people because you're upset, or you can't bite them or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I think I'd feel so fulfilled as a parent if like by the time she like gets to high school, she's like, some people are like being mean and she's like, let's talk about what triggered, like what happened, like how did I hurt your feelings? Or like somebody will come up to I apologize for hurting your feelings because I didn't mean to. Yeah. And Like, you know, and if you want to be a crazy bitch and not forgive me, or you want to be a crazy, you know, whomever and not forgive me, then that's your choice. But I'd still like to be your friend. I would be thrilled.
I remember like somebody wanting to beat my ass. Everybody always wanted to beat my ass in middle school. And I know what it was. I know why now, but I didn't know why then. I didn't realize. And it was because I had a lighter skin tone and everybody else had a darker skin tone. And everybody was bussed in from a different area. Right?
Oh, gotcha.
And so I was just like, and I had no idea of this thing between lighter skin tones and darker skin tones. And it wasn't specifically that. It was that all the boys liked me. And they only liked me because I had a lighter skin tone. That's really what it was. And so it was this thing where there was this angst with all the other girls. But I didn't know because I didn't hang out with them. We didn't have the same culture. So we did not hang out. And but I remember one day this girl wanting to fight me. Like, for literally no reason. And I remember looking at her and being like, well, why? Like, you know, she was like, I want to beat your ass. And I was like, why? Like, what? Like, it did not compute. And the situation very quickly diffused because it's hard to beat someone's ass who's like, but why? Like, what are we?
Who's not throwing any hostility back at you. And it's just like, huh?
Like, what are we doing? What happened that there's, you know, like, or whatever. Yeah. And I'll never forget that because I was always like, they were always trying to like provoke me into something, but I was like a really mellow kid, you know. I did fight a couple times, and every time I won, and because I have a lot of siblings, I know how to fight, but it doesn't mean that's my, you know, go-to state, you know, or whatever. And then after that, they left me alone. But it's really hard to fight somebody who wants to problem solve.
You know, I think is really interesting about that is that's just like a good example of a generational learned behavior, because that came from slavery, because lighter skinned people were working like in the houses instead of in the fields, and they were getting like better food and better clothes and better
treatment. You were
better treatment.
Well, you were also probably related to.
You were also probably related to
the master of the plantation.
Probably meant that your mom was raped at some point by the master of the plantation, and it's such an interesting thing because it just shows like you really can hand down, even unconsciously, because they probably don't think, oh, I'm handing down a prejudice of light women. Yeah. Like the women in their life probably aren't actively saying, and light girls are the worst. But it's like such a learned thing from watching the way that their moms.
Some of them are. I mean, like when I look back, my mom was really great at nipping stuff, right? She didn't so my siblings, we range from the most chocolate. I'm the lightest one. And I never knew anything different. You know, my sister is much darker than I am. And I was like, she's a goddess, you know, like whatever. And I remember the first day a girl coming up to me in middle school, I had gone from private to public. And she was like, you think you're, because I wouldn't talk to them because they were rough. I mean, they were a rough and tumble group. She's like,
you're like a little suburban kid, and they're from the inner city. And you're like, I don't know if we could be friends.
Yeah, like it was, you know, like
my mom says I have to go to church after school.
That's exactly me. I was like, what's going on, guys? Hi, whatever, you know. And I was a really bubbly valley girl or whatever. And you know, to their own credit, they had to be rough for wherever they were. Yeah. But it just, our cultures were different. You know, my mom wouldn't let me hang out with them under no circumstances. And so at school, I used to dodge them. I used to go to the library and read every day because there was always a something, and I didn't understand, you know. And so I remember this girl coming and saying, "Oh, you don't want to hang with us. You don't want to like be part of our crew because you're light skinned." And I was like, what does that have to do? Like, I was so confused. I was like, and I remember thinking, well, my sister has dark skin. Like, what? Like, I didn't.
Yeah, like, how is that relevant?
How is that relevant? Yeah. You know, and that was my first introduction to that idea of different skin tones being an
better or worse,
or an answer for something. You know, and I remember going home and talking to my mom, and my mom never blamed things on racism. She always blamed it on ignorance. So she never made it like about your color or whatever. She's like, oh, that person is just ignorant. I remember the first time somebody was called me a nigger, right? It was this boy from down the block. I was on my bike and he came with this stick. I still have the scar. And he jabbed me in the stomach. And he was like,
God.
He just ran. He was like, nigga. And hit me in the stomach. I had no idea what was going on. I was like, what the? You know, and I ran inside and I told my mom. And my mom, my mom immediately, like, she grabbed me and she marched down to his house or whatever, and to tell his dad, to talk to his dad or whatever.
Yeah.
But that was the first time I'd ever heard that word. It's the first time I never knew. But she never said, like, oh, it's because you're black. She's like, oh, it's ignorance. Nobody's raising him well or whatever.
Which is true.
It was
true. A little kid is stabbing another little kid in the stomach.
Oh, yeah.
For any reason, let alone saying a racial slur, you're not doing a good job.
You're not doing a good you know, but
Jesus
when
Christ.
we got there, I distinctly remember, like, the dad was drunk and it was only like noon.
Oh.
His dad was completely drunk. And I'm a little kid and I can tell. I'm like, he's drunk. And his dad beat him right there in the doorway to like an inch of his life. And I remember thinking, that's not the result I want. I didn't want to get hit, but I also did not want to see him get beat down like that, you know, or whatever. And I remember it just being a very weird situation to have or whatever. But like, to nowadays, like, every time somebody has a kid, because my family's so mixed, you can get any end of the spectrum of eye color or skin tone or whatever. And I distinctly hate it when people comment on a new baby. The new baby comes and they're like, oh, are they light, or what color are they going to be, or what's their eye going to be, or whatever. And they're vying for a specific thing. I'm like, you have a healthy baby. Shut the fuck up. Love on your healthy baby. Don't talk about if I have a baby and people are like, what? I'm like, don't talk about my baby's looks. Don't talk about, like, I don't want that to be something that they're hearing.
I think it's weird when people say, like, oh, your kid's going to be a heartbreaker later. And they're like, what a weird thing to say. Or like, oh, the girl is going to be chasing the girls. And I'm like, what a weird thing to say about a baby. People are so weird.
You know?
I do have to say, though, Kira had blue eyes for the first, like, she kept them for like almost 8 or 9 months. And me and Leo were really pulling for them to stay because they were like this like deep slate blue.
Yeah.
They were really unusual. And we're like, maybe they'll stay. It's so unusual. So cool. I mean, I always thought they would end up brown because his eyes are like incredibly dark brown.
Yeah.
So I assumed that they would be light brown, which they are, or like medium brown or whatever. But they were like slate blue for so long. We're like, I don't know, maybe it's a genetic anomaly. Maybe the baby's gonna have slate blue eyes for the rest of its life. It doesn't. We were hoping. We didn't really care about the rest of the features or hair. You know, we just sort of assumed she would have, you know, dark brown hair and
the dominant ones.
Yeah, I mean, she would have the dominant dark brown eyes, dark brown hair. We just sort of assumed that those would pop up. But when the blue eyes held on, we were like, wouldn't it be cool though? If she just like was like a little mutant.
Then you would.
She defied the probability of genetics.
She had 4 more months before they probably would have locked in there.
Yeah. She had a really long time before they would have locked in, but I was pulling for it.
Okay, so my favorite line in the book. So I also picked something that was non-sexual. I love books where there is a gossip column. I love it. I love when the gossip column is like driving like alongside the storyline of a book. And so in this book, there's a gossip column. So my favorite one was, I kind of like abbreviated some of this, but it's like, scandal blooms. Whispers have it that that is the elegant figure of the beau monde botanist herself that has caught the eye of the Duke of Westleigh. The Duke began the first dance with his garden nymph in arm, and if roving eyes can be trusted, he may have ended the night with her as well.
I liked that too. I just thought it was very funny, and
it was super well written.
Scandalo. I like that too.
I do love a good gossip column.
Yeah,
and the fact that his sister is like feeding information.
I know,
to the gossip
he
column.
Gets so mad at her, which is fun because like the next book is about her.
Yes,
about Constance, and I love at the end of this book, he's like, I forbid you forever from ever talking to a newspaper ever again and spreading gossip.
And she's like, sure.
She's like, yeah,
sure. Cool. You got it.
Okay.
Insert next book.
And she like still does not, even in the second book, this is like a little tease, but does not think she did anything wrong.
No.
Even though she absolutely could have ruined Poppy's life completely and left her like destitute on the side of the road. But she thinks she brought together a true love match, which she did.
She's like, all's well that ends well.
Ultimately, you did, but you also could have ruined everyone involved. And she does not. I really liked her character. I was excited when I actually didn't think the second book would be about her.
Yeah.
Only because I thought she would be kind of like the matchmaker for a few books before her book came around. But I was excited to find out that it was going to be her. So stay tuned. That will be another episode.
Dun, dun, dun.
I thought there were some good reviews from this book.
Okay.
My favorite one was from Corinne Michaels on Goodreads. And she said, wow, wow, wow. I'm sorry, but this is just how I read reviews. If this is not how you sound in real life, I apologize. But this is how you sound in my mind. Wow, wow, wow. I recommend this book on the recommendation of Sierra Simone, and I was obsessed with the cover and blurb. I absolutely loved it. The writing is flawless, and the way she handled the hero was brilliant. I devoured every word as the story was unraveled bit by bit. For those who love historical and want a bit of edge, this is the perfect book. And I was like, that sums it up pretty well.
I think that's actually an amazing review.
Yeah.
I decided to stick to Audible. Normally I'll switch to Goodreads or one of the other ones, but I was like, you know what, since I'm doing the audiobook, I'm going to just pick an Audible review. There were not that many reviews, but they all kind of mirrored what this person said, which was that the book was great. But here, I'll read it. The wrong reader. An affected American accent? Why? Wrong country, wrong class, wrong century. The story began well, but the accent was too much of an anachronism. And basically, all of the reviews said that the book was good, but the narrator was not their jam.
Got it. Did you feel like that also?
I did not feel like that. So I have long ago given up on expecting the narrator to have the right accent for the right time period or the right country. Like if it's in France, they do a British accent. Do you know what I mean? That's look at
what we do in American movies.
Look at Ever After. Ever After is taking place in France, and the whole thing they're doing is the British accent, except for every French word. They're like de l'encre.
Yeah,
de l'encre.
Nicole de l'encre. But it's so out of place because the only thing they say with that French accent.
Exactly.
That's a great point.
You know what I mean? And so
I love that movie.
Like
everyone watch that movie. It's the most romantic movie. It's great.
And I didn't care.
Yeah.
I really didn't care. I mean, as an intellectual and somebody who works in film and who's done a lot of period costuming classes and that sort of thing, I know I'm aware. Yeah. But I'm also like, I don't care.
But aside from the accent, you think the read was good?
I thought she did a really good job with the read.
Okay.
I thought she gave it an accent, so I felt like I was in an other. The place was other. Okay. And that's all I really cared about. So yeah.
Other enough. Other time period. Other enough.
Other enough.
I thought another thing that did a really good job of kind of letting me know this was a different time period was the front jacket of the book. Because she had the sort of the dress on, the 19th century dress on, with the back, her hair was up.
I love a good back.
The nice long neck
I love a good back.
And it was like the Duke I Tempted, and you're like, oh shit, we're about to get historical up in here. I did feel like after finishing the book, I don't know that she tempted the Duke. Because tempting makes me think that you're doing it knowingly. Yeah. And I think that
seducing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like you're doing something to tempt him or to attract his attention, which she obviously did not do at all because it's not her character. Great title though. She didn't obviously tempt him, but she did tempt him, but unknowingly. Yeah. I liked the front cover. I thought the dress was beautiful. I thought the neck was working for me. I liked that it was focused on her. And that the title of the book was focused on her, and the book was, it's from both their points of view, but I liked that the book was about her, and she was like an actual full character with a drive outside of marrying him or outside of being his wife. She had like a full complex business plan and life plan and sort of like person aside from him. Yes. Which I feel like is not the typical historical romance. No. And I enjoyed it.
And also, I do love that she married him with like the caveat that this is for my business, Yeah. Like even when she made that concession, it was like for my business. Yeah. So, but yeah, the book cover I thought was pretty and it made sense for her. I do love that it was focused on her because so many times you think the book is focused on one thing and they make the cover about the guy and he's so much not the plot or, so much like a side character. Yeah. With the flowers and stuff because she's, like the botanist or whatever. I didn't feel like the cover told me what I could expect in the book at all. It was just for me, it was just a pretty cover.
It was just pretty, yeah.
You know, it's
I mean,
pretty
maybe
artwork.
she was holding like a switch or something.
Yeah, like if she, that's exactly
Like a riding
like
crop.
like or a tree branch, like
Yeah.
a you know, or whatever. I think that could have.
Oh, she has the key in her hand now that I'm zooming in.
Oh, does she?
She has the key in her hand, but how would you know that?
Still.
And also, it's very hard to see it in the cover art.
Yeah, still like I still want to know what that key is for. But later on, after reading the book and you see her with the switch, then you're like, oh, and that makes sense. So I did think it was a beautiful cover. But I did also think like the second book, the cover, sometimes when authors make the covers very similar, it drives me crazy because the cover is really how I identify the book.
Okay.
I'm like, oh, it's the book with the girl with the purple dress and then whatever. And if the next book looks very similar or that sort of thing, I kept getting confused in between the books when I would hit play. I would start playing the other book, the wrong one, or whatever. But yeah, I did like it. I did kind of want her to put something in there that told me that there was going to be an edge.
Like a little edge.
A little edge. You know what I'm saying?
Little kinky kink.
You know what I'm saying? A little how's your mother?
Yes. How's your mom?
How's your mother?
I would recommend that you read book 2.
Yes, I would recommend that.
I mean, there are lots of other historical romances, and we'll obviously shoot you guys links and stuff to all of those. But this book was awesome, and you should read the second book. And we're going to talk about the second book, so you should read it for that reason too.
Exactly.
So you can read with us.
So this author, I'm with her. I'm with her. I'm riding with her.
I love that it says book 1 and there's already a book 2, and I'm like, are we gonna get a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? How many more books do you got?
How many characters did she introduce?
I'm like, I don't feel like she's introduced enough characters. No. Certainly not in this book to feel like there's a huge group of people.
Yeah.
But you could also still, I mean, it's pretty easy to introduce a character, I feel like.
Have you ever read a book where in book 1, they introduced a side character who was like a dick? Like a terrible, terrible dick, and you hated them. And then they bring them around in book 5 for their love story? Have you been able to get into it?
No, because I'm like super mad that you've been lying to me, and all of a sudden they're a good person. And I'm like, are they though?
Are they?
Because they've been acting like a real cunt for the past 5 books.
I was like, is that just me? Because I read one like that. I was like, you made me hate this character, and now you're trying to make me invested in this character. And like, even they're like, oh, well, bad stuff happened to him. I don't care.
I mean, that only works, and I'll say this with all seriousness, that only works in supernatural books.
Yeah. Lothario.
Like Sadist.
Yeah.
It's like, it only works in that circumstance because he was a slave for 200 years and being tortured.
Yeah.
So you can forgive him a little bit of social awkwardness, and you can forgive the fact that when you find out his full story, that he's a jerk and he's very like harsh and immediately defensive about everything because has been actually hurt for 200 plus years, and he's a vampire. He's another species. In that case, I'm like, okay, I can forgive these things.
But she never made Zadis actually
good later.
Well, he still says Zadis, but she never made him actually do something really fucked up. Like he may have cornered her and been hey girl or whatever, but then nothing happened after that. That's true. So no line was crossed. But some of these are where a line was crossed, and you're just like, how am I supposed to?
Oh yeah,
like this character now, like that to me, like in the Immortals After Dark, there's a book called Lothario. He's like a puppet master through the whole thing. He's slightly shady, whatever, but he never crosses a line. But he's still shady as hell. Yeah. So when in his book, you actually get like it feels more of that like dominant. He has that dominant like, ooh, this is like he gives you that billionaire feel. Yeah. You know. So anyway, I would recommend. This was worth the read. Absolutely.
Worth the read.
Yeah.
We loved it.
Give us more. Give me more.
Unsurprisingly, this book won the Golden Heart Award, which is an award that the Romance Writers of America give, which is the biggest romance writers group. And you submit unpublished manuscripts, and then they give out awards, and they have like finalists and stuff. And this book won, and then the second book was a finalist. So sealed by the Romance Writers of America as a new upcoming author and debut novel. And I think they were right on track, because this is definitely one of the best romance novels. Certainly the best historical romance novels I've read in a while.
Yes, I will remember the title of this book.
Yeah,
like And that's, at this point, like a miracle.
Yeah, I know, right? My mind is a sieve. There are so many titles flowing through it.
I only remember the first books I ever read, really. The ones that made the first impact of us, you know? The first one that made you go,
Ooh. You know? Is anyone home?
Exactly.
Shut my door.
I'm still trying to figure out this one book where it was like a woman, she had been like, I think she had been like assaulted at a certain point, and she would hang like bells on her door so that she could hear if anybody was coming in. And it was an old book, and I think it was in the 70s that it was written. It had one of those old covers. I read it at the library. It was missing pages type thing. I also stole pages out of it, the sexy ones.
Your desecration of library books is something we really need to talk about.
Oh my God, Bridget, judge me. Please, just judge me.
You.
The shame will make me
I
stop.
don't judge a lot of things, but I judge desecration of library books.
I was like 15.
That's so rude for the next person.
I know, so rude. Can you imagine getting to the sex scene and it's gone?
Yeah, that's terrible. Any book, you're just ripping out pages of the story, and then people are like, the fuck's going on?
But
rude.
I need to know what that book is, because it was like one of the first ones I had ever read.
Where are the pages that you stole? He threw them away.
My mom found them, and they are gone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that'll happen. All right, fair listeners, we have to go. But until then,
may your books be your lover.
And your hand your best friend.
Yowza!
We'll see you next time.
See you next time. Good job, Bridget.
Good job, Shani.
Hey.